Do pharmaceutical companies financially influence the results of drug research, clinical trials, and drug studies to make their drugs seem more favorable and less dangerous? And how do they do this?
The easy answer is yes. How they do it, let's just say that most of the clinical trial research in the world really is financed by the pharmaceutical industry. And you know, you might say that what's wrong with that? They have drugs that they're developing, they need to test them in order to get them approved by the FDA, and they have to do clinical trials. Oftentimes they're doing it in trials in people who might benefit from this treatment, so they're providing a sort of sense of whether the drug works or not. The problem is, in my opinion, of course this is my opinion, is that every step along the way when the pharmaceutical companies are paying for the research, they're expecting results. So you see huge numbers of problems along the way, including research that either proves that the drug is harmful and that research gets buried, or, and Joanna can probably talk about how that happened with antidepressants, where you've got, when they've got the control over the research, they can determine how it gets used. Now, there are scientists in the world right now, I don't know if you've heard of the all trials concept, where they are demanding, and this has been a recent thing, and I think quite a good movement, they're demanding that drug companies have to register their trials before they do them, before they start enrolling patients. And they have to say, this is what we're going to study, and this is what we're going to look for, and these are the results that would determine a level of success of this drug. And if they don't register the trial beforehand, then a lot of major medical journals will not publish the results. That's a good thing, because it hasn't always been that way. They've done trials in the past, and in fact, and the trials that prove negative, they've buried them. So this idea of publication control is really something that I think has been quite a scandal. The world is coming awake to it. Joanna, you could probably give some good examples where publication bias has really influenced.
Yeah, we know that with antidepressants, for example, but I'm sure it's true for all sorts of other classes of drugs, the drug companies bury negative trials to such an extent that it really makes a difference as to whether we consider the drugs to be effective or not. So if you add in the negative unpublished trials to the positive published trials of antidepressants, suddenly the differences between the antidepressant and placebo are minute. Really clinically irrelevant. The most famous antidepressant trial, which shows how the pharmaceutical companies do this, is a study called 329, Study 329, and it was a study of paroxetine, which is Paxil in the US, isn't it, in children. And it was basically a negative study that showed that there was no difference between the Paxil and placebo, but there were some nasty adverse effects, including children getting really agitated and some having suicidal thoughts. And the study was published as showing it was effective and it was safe. For legal reasons, the company had to publish all their papers, and it was found that the outcomes that they were initially going to look at were negative, so they then changed their plan and said, okay, we'll take this outcome here. That looks as if it's a little bit positive. We'll use that and we'll pretend that was our main outcome, and we'll bury what we said was our main outcome in the small print. So the main outcome that was proposed at the beginning of the trial was there in the published paper, but you would never have known that it was actually a main outcome. It was just a tiny line in a table, and they'd elevated some test they'd done that showed a small positive effect to be their main outcome. So that's how they do it. It was clearly showed in these papers about Study 329. Incidentally, the study was rejected from the first couple of journals that they sent it to, because the journals realized something fishy was going on. It didn't look right. But they kept trying, and they got it published in a reasonably reputable journal as they wanted it to be published. That's a story about antidepressants. it's clear that it happens in all sorts of conditions.
This is routine and rampant in the industry, and that's why projects like the Cochrane collaboration are so vital. For instance, when they brought Vioxx into the U.S., they already knew that it was a disastrous drug because the studies had been done in Europe. They knew that it was going to cause X number of heart attacks and X number of strokes, but they set the price so that they could cover the legal expenses. They knew that it was going to kill people. They went ahead and put the drug on the market anyway. They just set aside X amount of dollars, and they knew what their profit margin was going to be. And this type of obfuscescence work happens all the time, where they bury data, don't include data, or ignore data in trials in other places. So it's not a healthy system.
Let me add one more example, and this is outside of psychiatry or mammography, and this is cholesterol. So the major cholesterol lowering trials have been done by this cholesterol trialists in the UK, well, in Europe. And over the years, we've discovered that those trials are not actually made public. They selectively release information about the trial in the trials in a way that makes cholesterol-lowering drugs appear to be vastly more effective than they are. In fact, I would argue that cholesterol lowering with statins is probably the biggest waste and the biggest scandal in the pharmaceutical industry almost ever. Bigger than Vioxx, bigger than antidepressants. When I look at the audience here, probably 25 to 30% of you who have either been prescribed a cholesterol-lowering drug yourself, have certainly had your cholesterol tested, or have a loved one that has had their cholesterol tested. When you look at the overall benefits and harms related to these drugs, information that for years has been, I think, hidden or, shall I say, distorted for physicians, you realize that the benefits of cholesterol lowering with statins is very minute. For healthy people who haven't otherwise had a heart attack or have heart disease, the benefits are non-existent. People who have had a heart attack might have a 1% to 3% benefit, but still, the side effects related to the drug, including muscle weakness and cognitive difficulties. I'm saying that because people are going to be going to their doctors and saying, I think my cholesterol-lowering drug is causing me to have, I can't get out of a chair anymore. I can't walk up the stairs. And the doctor will dismiss it. That's because the information on the adverse effects of cholesterol-lowering drugs has been hidden from the doctors for years. It really is a very scandalous state of affairs.
And I think cholesterol-lowering agents, statins, are a primary cause of dementia and Alzheimer's. Every hormone in the body, the basis of it is cholesterol. So if you don't have enough, your liver will make more because it's a primary essential building block for so many things, including brain cells. The statin, I agree, the statin scandal may be the greatest of all scandals.